YouTube, welcome to my channel, Australian Jiao Shu. In the Australian media I keep hearing a lot about student visas and the amount of visas issued and putting caps and all that sort of stuff, and I looked at the numbers, and there's about the last financial year in Australia, there's something like 380, something like that, visas issued, student visas. I mean, I'm a pro-immigration guy, but I've worked in the Middle East extensively for many years, and I've seen what a good immigration system looks like, and that is not what I see in Australia. But as I say, about 380,000, something like that, student visas issued, about 100,000 for the temporary skilled set. Around 200, 230, 240 for the work and holiday crowd, and about 1.78 million for New Zealand special visas. Nearly 1.8 million in 1 year. So next time you're going to rent a property or something like that in Australia, or you go for a job, just remember those numbers. And how the people in the Kremlin or Canberra are looking after putting Australians first. And just to highlight the Australian immigration system, the current government, and you got to give credit where credit's due. I think this bill is great. There was a Migration Amendment Bill 2024 that the government put forward, and I thought it was fantastic. And what it did was, if a non-citizen was going to be removed from Australia, the non-citizen had exhausted all avenues and was going to be removed or deported from Australia. If that non-citizen didn't cooperate with removal from Australia, it was a mandatory jail sentence of 1 or 5 years plus and/or $90,000, something like that, fine. And the kicker that all the lefties were vomiting over as well was that non-citizen's home country. If that non-citizen's home country refused to accept that non-citizen, it was labelled a removal country of concern. And if it was labelled a removal country of concern, there was no more new visas to Australia from that country. It was blacklisted. So, yeah, I think that was great. So, anyway, the toughen immigration opposition and all that in Australia. There's a new bill now that, as far as I know, it got put through. And the new bill authorises the Australian government, using taxpayer money, to pay a third country to take the non-citizen being deported from Australia. So what I'd like to know, if it is taxpayer money, a bit of transparency. How much for each individual non-citizen being deported from Australia, how much that non-citizen cost in exhausting all appeals to prevent deportation, if at all any taxpayer money was used for that, for the detention, for accommodation, food and all that, for the flight to the third country, for the payment, how much the Australian government paid that third country, and is there any action in that country, like is there any more the Australian government has to pay that country, like do the Australian government, do we the taxpayer have to pay for that non-citizen's accommodation in that country, or are there any ongoing payments, and are there any associated deals with that, like does that country that is accepting that non-citizen from Australia, do they get access to Australian markets? Can they sell their apples or grapes or something like that they couldn't before, or go fishing in a certain area, things like that. There's a lot to be said. I mean, I saw the submissions and the recommendations of that, and some of the stuff was like there's no compelling reason, or it's an international embarrassment, or it's not going to change overseas governments' attitudes. Well, of course it's not, but at least maybe in 12 months from now we won't have another whole lot of people from that country that are going to refuse to go back and have to deal with double. And as far as embarrassment and compelling and stuff like that, I mean, allegedly there's something like 80 or 90,000 people that have no valid visa to be in Australia now, and some of them apparently allegedly are protesting. So I don't know how effective this bill is now, or how good the people in the Kremlin or Canberra are, got the best interests of Australians first. I mean, it's a bit of a slap in the face for the Australian taxpayer, who's getting up every day or every night and going to work and paying, ridiculous levels of income tax and things like that. And this sort of garbage happens. But that's Australia in 2025, unfortunately.